Episode 204 of the Aggressive Progressive Podcast. It seems like everything is judged only in the eye of the beholder. Let's start the show.
We are now the defenders of the stronghold of democracy and of equal opportunity.
I'm Chris Hahn. This is the Aggressive Progressive Podcast. Welcome. I'm at Christopher Hahn on Twitter, Christopher Hahn NY on Instagram, and ChristopherHahn.com. Thank you for liking, rating, reviewing, subscribing, and telling your friends about this podcast. Really helps. I got a great guest coming up, Janet Johnson. We're going to talk about all sorts of stuff, so listen for that. You're going to enjoy it. But first, I guess I haven't talked about that incident on the subway in New York City a couple of weeks ago where a former Marine, I guess he was a former Marine, put a guy in a chokehold and killed him. Now, my take's going to be a little different than your average progressive voice. I'm not going to jump to a conclusion and say the Marine was guilty. I don't know the full situation of what happened there. Now, the evidence I have seen makes me believe that the force that was used here was excessive, and he is going to be found guilty of manslaughter by a jury. I don't know that he'll get murder, but he'll get manslaughter for sure, right? Here's the thing. There's a couple of points I want to make here. First, vigilante justice is not justice. Okay, let me make that perfectly clear. I know that a lot of you listening to me who sometimes listen to me on conservative radio stations think that it's great that this guy got rid of this street performer who was acting erratic on the subway. Now, look, I commuted to Manhattan for 6 years. I spent a lot of time on the subway, and I saw a lot of things on the subway. I never saw anything on the subway that made me think that guy should die. Well, let me say that again. Never saw anything on a subway that made me think that guy should die. Now, I saw some things on the subway that made me speak up and say, hey, knock it off. I saw a couple of things on the subway over the years that made me step in and push people apart. I probably shouldn't have done that when you think about it. And I saw some things on the subway that were annoying and maybe even somewhat scary to the point of threatening. But never anything that made me say, that person should die. So this is the thing, the question we have here in America. When is it right for a non-law enforcement official to step in and use deadly force? And I don't think, unless deadly force is actually occurring or being threatened to be occurred or imminent, if you will, I don't think it's ever appropriate for a civilian to use deadly force. Deadly force is to protect yourself and others from deadly force or imminent harm. What happened in that incident was deadly force applied to a guy who was being erratic. That's all I've heard. I haven't heard he was threatening anybody. Now, the broader point I want to make here is that how we see this is dependent on what jersey we're wearing, just like everything else in America today. What jersey do you wear tells you how you're going to perceive this incident. I mean, if you're a progressive, you think this is the worst thing that ever happened. If you're a conservative, you think this is great. More people should be doing this. Now, we have a justice system in this country. We're supposed to be a country of law and order. Conservatives are supposed to believe in law and order. Law and order doesn't allow for this kind of behavior by anyone. And again, I'm not judging this guy. I want to know what his mens rea was. I want to know what he was thinking when he made that move. I want to know what the people around him were thinking, how threatened they felt. But right now, I've heard no talk of weapons, no talk of any physical harm. I heard a guy that was mouthing off saying he'd rather be dead because he was starving. He didn't have any food or water. I don't know that that warrants a death sentence. And I don't think any of you do either. Right? I talked yesterday about how we all have mothers. We all have kids and friends and family. What if that was one of your friends who fallen on bad times and was starving? And maybe because of that hunger and that homelessness, there was a feeling of depression and desperation. And there he was on a subway car, acting out inappropriately. And yes, sir, I'm not saying there was anything appropriate about it. Maybe there should have been some sort of punishment, a fine, maybe a night in jail. But it's not death. And if it was your kid, you wouldn't want him to die either. Oh, and you're going to say, well, if it was you on the subway or your family on the subway, you'd want somebody. Yeah, I might want somebody to step in. But I wouldn't want anybody to kill somebody for me for that. This is the thing, right? This is the problem. We're looking at this again as we look through everything else through a political spectrum that is corroded. That's not how we should look at every issue in our society. Now don't get offended. If you live in the South, this doesn't apply to you. If you're from the South, if you're born in the South, maybe even the Midwest, right, Southwest. I don't understand country music. Now, I'm not saying all country music. There are some country music songs that blow me away, right? I think that Carrie Underwood song where she's beating up the guy's truck, I think that's a great freaking song. Friends in Low Places was one of my favorite songs when I was in college, right? Blame it all on my roots. I showed up in boots. And there's a lot of good ones. Old Town Road, there's a lot of good ones, right? There are some exceptionally good country songs. But a lot of it is very similar. And I don't understand people from New York who have no connection to most of it that like it. And I feel like that is more of a political statement than what you actually like. Now, look, I know I'm going to get a lot of emails. Feel free to email me on this. Go to ChristopherHahn.com. There's an email. I will read them on the air. You give me a reason why you think it's good. You tell me. But I'm pretty sure if you gave me a topic, I could write a country song that is as good. Now, I'm not saying it's as good as like Goodbye Earl by the Dixie Chicks or the Chicks or whatever they're calling themselves now. I'm not. That's a great song. It's not. I'm not going to write Friends in Low Places, but I'm going to write something that is just as good as most of the other filler country songs on most stations. I don't understand how people in New York and in the Northeast like it. And I'm telling you, it's a political statement. They don't really like it. It's like a culture thing. Because it's hard to like, right? And again, country stations are doing well. People still buy country albums. I guess they buy CDs. I don't know. I don't even know where you buy music. I tried to buy a song on iTunes the other day. I couldn't do it. I didn't know that didn't exist anymore. I thought I could spend 99 cents or $1.29 and buy music, like one song, to download onto my phone. Turns out I can't. Now, maybe it's just me. Maybe I got to figure something else out. I wanted to buy something. I heard a song and it was in my ear. And I was listening to it like on one of those streaming services, but I couldn't listen to it on a loop. And I like to do that sometimes, and it drove me nuts. And by the way, I'm pretty sure I could turn that into a country song. All I got to add is my dog and a truck, right? That's it. I'm telling this to people, somebody said to me, I'm thinking about buying a Jeep. And I've always wanted a Jeep, like a Wrangler. But I'm thinking about getting the Rubicon, like one of those 4-door now. Because I have kids, I like to do things. I have dogs. And somebody said to me, well, that's what all conservative guys drive. I go, are you freaking kidding me? Like, I'm not going to buy a Jeep that I've always wanted because some group of guys decided that this was a conservative vehicle because it looks like something in the Army. I I'm going to buy a Jeep because I want to take the top off and go for a ride on the beach with my dog. Okay? I don't understand the political statement that people think I'm making. I said this the other day. Like, I want to wear my red hat again. I got a nice red hat. We're viewing too many things through political spectrums, so much so that people are liking music that's just not good. It's just, and again, like I said, there's some great country songs. Great. Shania Twain had a bunch of them, right? Loved her. But then there's like, I mean, some of them are kind of drinky songs. I get that. But you're going to listen to a whole, like, 2-hour concert of that crap? I don't. The Beatles, they are not, right? I don't really get it. Now, I get if you're from the South and that's kind of your culture and what you grew up in. You like that. I don't know why, because, you know, music definitely was available in the South. Rock and roll was available in the South. And I know a lot of rock and roll comes from the South, but it doesn't really come from country and Western music. It comes from blues and jazz, right? And maybe there was a little bit of country mixed in. And that's where rock and roll comes from. I don't get it. You tell me why you like a country song and give me a legit topic and I'll write one. Like, I'll write it on the air live on one of my shows. I just think it's like, I think it's very basic. I think most of the lyrics are basic. The rhythms are basic. And there's not a whole lot of innovation in country. That's just me. All right. I'm sure I pissed a lot of you off today with that, because I know there are a lot of country and Western music listeners, mostly on the right. So I'm glad I did. But you know, you prove me. Tell me I'm wrong. Look, if you could prove that I'm wrong, I will admit that I'm wrong. Like I said, not all of it, most of it. I hope you're not too mad. All right, Janet Johnson is joining me on the other side of the break. Stay where you are. Joining me now, great friend of the show, great friend of mine, who I've never met physically. Janet Johnson, she is an attorney and a great political analyst. You could see her on News Nation and other places. Janet, how you doing?
I'm well. I know it's so weird we haven't met. You had a chance. I think you stood me up in New York.
I had a chance, but it was like Saturday night. You got to be there between 6 and 7. Stand on the corner of 42nd and 7th, and I'll jump out of the car for like a minute, and then we're going to see Hamilton.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah, I'm like Camilla, you know, like you have to stand there and wave and, you know.
Yeah, I'd be like one of the people going into, what do they call it? The mall, not the mall, the mall.
I know. My husband kept saying, like, what's wrong with these people? Why do they say everything wrong? It's crazy.
I think that, you know, I said this earlier in the show about this coronation. That whole apparatus that existed to make the Queen look good now exists for Charles.
But it's not going to work. I mean, I know this. We're going to go.
It's already working. It's already working.
Is it? I just, as an American, it cemented everything that I never understood about why we broke away, why the colonies broke away. I just, watching it, I thought, what kind of idiots bow to just this schmuck? He's just some guy.
Some guy who was lucky. The luck of birth.
Won
right?
sperm lottery. Absolutely.
Yeah.
America we really were onto something. I can't believe everyone else hasn't picked up on this.
But the question is, Janet, we were onto something, but will it continue? I mean, we both watched your former network last night, CNN.
Not if CNN has anything to say about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very disturbing. There are people who think it's good to let him, spew his venom on TV and, that people will learn, but then they stock the audience with these sycophants who apparently thought he was great, mocking the woman that he sexually assaulted.
I mean, they laughed.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't watch it, so I have to say, all I got was what people were saying on Twitter, and I saw that happened. I don't know if there's any argument that it's nervous laughter because it's such a creepy thing.
No. They were laughing. I watched it.
They were actively laughing.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I saw the interviews afterwards where people, did this make you feel, any worse about him? And nobody felt worse about him. I mean, I don't know where they found these people, and I assume that's part of the deal to get him on. The Chris Light era. I knew Zucker. I knew him. He went to college with my brother. I've known him since before he was, Jeff Zucker. And as bad as his whole Apprentice, I mean, obviously he's partially responsible for Donald Trump. There's some very bad things you could say about him, but I don't think his CNN would have done that.
No.
That was a pretty shameful day. And, I don't think Caitlin Collins is she's from the Daily Caller. I mean, she's not, Edward R. Murrow.
Well, I thought she did her best. Like, she was trying to fact check this guy in real time, and she kept punching. She never stopped punching the entire hour and a half.
But, I mean, he's saying things, again, this is, I'm reading it, I didn't see it, but things to the effect that Democrats support, a partial birth abortions on demand at 9 months.
Yeah, they're saying that he was saying that they would let them be born and then kill them.
It's called murder, right?
Yeah,
I mean, And she didn't, my understanding is she didn't fact check that. But, it's the setup that that he's going to get first of all, he helped support attempt to overthrow the government, and he still supports the people who did that. He played their prison recordings.
He said he pardoned them last night.
Right. So why they know that? Why would you put him on to begin with? Right. I mean, that's not okay.
If you're going to put that guy on the air, the person interviewing him should be like Christiane Amanpour or somebody who is just not afraid of anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And by the way, and I'm not saying Caitlin Collins looked afraid. I honestly thought she did her best. But, she is not as experienced as a Christiane Amanpour or Wolf Blitzer, somebody who's been around, right?
But how would that have ever, I mean, the setup was designed to fail,
Right.
And he wouldn't have done it if it wasn't. I mean, there was an agreement that was negotiated. They asked him to be on. It wasn't, they were trying to entice him. And, I think if he didn't have the audience that he knew would be people who were supportive, and he didn't have, there's, again, I didn't see it, but from reading what was said, and I purposely did not want to contribute to, watching this.
Right.
But, he lies at a rate that no one can fact check, and he talks over people.
I actually felt I had to watch it because of, the job I have.
I know, and I get it. I mean,
I hated watching it. I made my wife watch it. She left. She got up and went upstairs. And
it's dirty, right?
Yeah, I felt dirty for watching it. And thank God there was a fresh Ted Lasso to watch right after. Janet, we're talking about the CNN town hall with Donald Trump. Yeah, I mean, you're right. It was a dirty event. I felt dirty afterwards. I usually just have a scoop of ice cream at night. I made myself a sundae. I cut up bananas and everything.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is that you can see the writing on the wall. It's 2016 all over again.
Yeah.
The plane on the runway, Hillary Clinton giving a substantive, fantastic speech, and he's, just like eating a hamburger.
Right.
And they'll leave the speech to watch him eating a hamburger.
Right.
And it's the same nonsense all over again, except now they're not even pretending that it's a scandal, and they don't even act like, they put election deniers, Brian Mast was on the panel afterwards.
Right. Joe Pinion for like the whole hour. Just
to add insult to injury. I mean, the whole, setup is, the verdict comes out in the E. Jean Carroll civil lawsuit. I mean, this is massively historic, right? I mean,
yeah.
The jury found that he sexually assaulted her. I mean, that is not a small, Bill Clinton had a consensual oral sex with a woman, and that was a much bigger scandal than this verdict, which is, unprecedented. But the coverage was immediately, people are still going to like him. This isn't.
Yeah, I mean, every conservative talk show host said, "Oh, this is good for Trump." How?
It's just objectively when when it's been determined by a preponderance of the evidence that this woman was sexually assaulted by a man, you don't immediately turn to, praising the man and then letting him do a town hall.
Yeah, and then he goes and says, I didn't do it, I don't know her, she's a nut.
Yeah, well, and the thought is, and I think it's probably a good thought, she clearly has another lawsuit.
Yeah.
She, wouldn't even have to establish at this point that the sexual assault occurred because she has a finding.
Right.
That it occurred.
He defamed her again.
And, I hope that she does it. It's not that easy to sue people. I mean, this is not a...
Well, she's got $5 million now. She can afford a very good attorney.
Does she have it? Oh, she does have a very good attorney. But, I mean, she doesn't have the money yet.
You know what I hope? I hope that there are multiple women out there who've had similar experiences with this guy who sue him.
I think there are. I mean, there definitely are multiple women, right? I think...
I got to tell you, though, I don't think... Look, politics is one on the margins, right? It's not one. You're not moving huge blocks of people. And quite frankly, you don't even have to move huge blocks of people. You're going to move 20,000 people in Pennsylvania, 10,000 people in Wisconsin. I don't know how this helps him.
Oh.
Right? I think that, you moved 10,000 people in Wisconsin by getting convicted or found liable of sexual assault. And they're all women and they don't want anything to do with you anymore.
Well, but the two problems are... That's why Republicans, are making it harder to vote and are trying to overturn the results of elections,
right,
which we can't rule out that they could do. And then, the other issue is the press is seemingly willing to, help rehabilitate him the minute he's, found liable.
Yeah.
So those two things are going to, and then, the Supreme Court, if need be, is standing in the wings, for the right price to, affect the outcome of anything that you ask.
And even if this guy decides to leave, we won't be able to get a justice approved because, one of our senators is not showing up for work.
Yeah. I mean, and that, there's no excuse for it.
No.
Just no excuse for it. And she, we both respected Dianne Feinstein. I mean, there's...
I loved her. I think she's one of the most historic figures that's in the Senate, frankly.
Right. But I mean, and I'm not ageist. I personally, I saw someone today say, oh, I wish we had two better choices, for president. Biden's age. He's quite frankly sprier than I am.
Me too.
They're 20-something years younger than he is. But Dianne Feinstein's too old. She is too old to do that job.
Well, even if she's not too old, she's just not... She's not available anymore.
Right.
It's like...
Well, she's holding up the entire process. And to what end? Because she thinks she has 10 more years? I mean, what is the goal? She has a Democratic governor who will appoint a fantastic replacement.
They could appoint Barbara Boxer to fill out her term.
Yeah.
Or somebody like that. You can't appoint one of the people running. But appoint somebody like Barbara Boxer who knows her way around the Senate and would be a great representative for California.
I never knew why she retired so early.
Because she didn't want to be hanging on too long.
I mean, but she had plenty of good years. I mean,
she does my show all the time. I love Barbara Boxer.
Fabulous.
She's one of my favorite people.
No, she's amazing.
Yeah.
I just don't know. She seemed way too young and way too, effective to retire when she did. But I mean, Feinstein, she has to go. I mean, and any. It pains me to say it, and I don't like the idea of Democrats attacking each other. But the only thing I can imagine is maybe she doesn't know what's going on, and people are somehow propping her up. But
I don't know why they would do that. I don't. No, it makes no sense. They're holding up. I mean, if there's a vacancy on the Supreme Court in the next 3 months or year, people drop dead all the time. Or people then, or maybe, somebody decides that shame's still a thing, right? Nobody has shame anymore in this country.
Well, you think Clarence Thomas is going to resign?
Somebody says they have some real shame. Like maybe there's a video out there of some weird stuff with this guy. I don't know.
I mean, but it's...
It would take that, I think.
The problem is it's like the George Santos effect. I mean... What does it take?
Right.
If it's a Democrat and, he's seen in a picture touching a woman's, derriere, he has to resign from the Senate. But
he's not even seen doing that. They're telling you he did.
Right. No, I'm talking about like Al Franken.
Right. That's what I'm talking about. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Right.
Al Franken resigned because of a vaudeville picture.
Right. Which, and good on us that we have, standards, I guess. But
how about Katie Hobbs?
Yeah, right.
She resigned because she had an inappropriate relationship with a staffer.
Aide. Yeah, exactly.
And it came out in a divorce, and she resigned.
Yeah.
Because Democrats said, Nancy Pelosi said, you're going to resign now because we have morals and shame here.
And I agree with that. I do. But the problem again is now it's baked into the recipe where the media also is sort of saying, yeah, it's true. Joe Biden's son can't have a job where he makes money, but Donald Trump's children can,
right.
Basically, run secret whatever they were doing with Saudi
Ivanka
Arabia.
Trump got $250 million worth of trademarks from China
right.
when she rode there on Air Force One.
Right. But, they immediately, this, whatever they're making up about Biden's, scandal, which is non-existent. This is the trick that they do that, you can convict or, return a verdict against Donald Trump for actually sexually assaulting someone. And then they immediately come out and hold a press conference. Hunter Biden has a laptop.
Right.
Keep talking about it. And people will continue to do the Hillary Clinton false equivalent.
It's because these dumb networks want to do both sides.
Yeah.
Both sides.
I know. I just, this could be, our undoing. Again, I don't, you're right. I don't think anyone watched CNN and said, now I am going to vote for Trump, even though, I hated him a minute ago.
Right.
But it does normalize it, and this.
Well, did you see John? Did you see Chris Sununu? His reaction?
No.
Oh.
Is he like? He's a never Trumper.
He lit into him.
Yeah.
In a way that nobody running for president has, and maybe look. I always say it's a coin flip, right? Trump needs a serious primary, and maybe it damages him a little bit. I don't think he loses a primary to anybody, but a damaged Trump is better than a Trump coming out of a primary with a fully united Republican Party.
Oh, right.
So I'd love to see a Chris Sununu get in and damage him because he literally was taking real shots at him, and you haven't heard that from anybody.
And none of these other people. Nikki Haley said, I'm not going to go there on this. Your opponent.
I'm not going to go there on this. Your opponent raped somebody.
Sexually assaulting a woman.
Right.
And you don't think that's fair game to say, you should vote for me because
right. This guy over here who's running, he was found. Well, Nikki Haley.
Your opponent.
Nikki Haley thinks she's going to be the VP candidate. All right.
Well, I think that's what she's running for. But the same with DeSantis.
Yep.
Again, I have to live in this place where every day he comes up with a new horrific. It's
horrible. George DeVolder Santos, public enemy number one.
If that is his name.
Yeah, if that is really his name. I've never seen a politician get indicted and then come out and speak to reporters for an hour. So
he is a mess, and let's face it, New York's a little bit of a mess, right? You guys. Your Democratic Party, that this guy was able to hoodwink everybody, is problematic. But it was not hard to find out what a scam artist he was. Apparently his roommate was dying to tell everybody about what a crummy person he is. He today, after being indicted yesterday, came and settled this foreign, credit card check scheme that he was running where he stole someone's identity.
Right.
The feds do not indict, especially in a case like this with a politician, unless it's a slam dunk case. This is, I'm sure he's going to end up pleading. He's not going to trial on this.
Well, if he pleads, he's got to leave, right?
Yeah. We've seen people refuse to do that, and the party puts pressure. But is Kevin McCarthy, these people do not act in a way that, prior people of good faith acted.
They don't have any shame.
No shame.
None.
No shame.
Oh, yeah, no. This is equivalent to Menendez.
Right, who was acquitted.
Who was acquitted. And by the way, who I called for to resign.
Yeah, it was troubling. I live in Florida, and, it happens, here with politicians pretty frequently. And it possibly, you could be acquitted. I know that there have been retrials and hung juries, and listen, Andrew Gillum was just found not guilty. I mean,
right.
Things happen, but it's consistent with what we know about him. I mean, obviously the campaign was dirty. I mean, he was, using campaign funds that he illegally solicited to buy clothes and, fraudulently applying and receiving unemployment benefits during the pandemic. His roommate, I'm sure, flipped on him because he said that he was, famous for doing these things. He was not hiding them. I think they have the goods on him. I don't think that's going to be a question. Yeah.
And you're a criminal defense attorney. You've seen a lot of cases.
And I try to have cases in federal court where the U.S. attorneys that I deal with are, they are hesitant to bring a case that they do not think is not, provable beyond a reasonable doubt, but just, inconceivable that there will be acquittal. I mean, they are not unreasonable people. They don't overcharge. I know that there's this idea, people getting charged in New York. Well, that's New York. This is the U.S. attorney.
And by the way, it's also Long Island where he got charged, and exactly. Long Island is not necessarily a liberal bastion.
Right. I mean, obviously
they elected him.
Right. So we know that the judgment of the jurors may not be the best.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's consistent with everything. There was again constantly trickling of bad faith, making false statements and financial disclosures. But again, this is Donald Trump, the exact same playbook. And as of right now, he hasn't been convicted of a crime, Donald Trump. So,
right.
Maybe the law and order does not apply to Republicans. I mean, again, it goes back to what we were saying that, if Joe Biden had, if any of these headlines had Joe Biden or Barack Obama's name,
I mean, if this was Joe Biden's son getting indicted,
yes,
they would be calling for Joe Biden to resign.
Right. Well, and that's what they're doing that just because he's being investigated.
Right.
Absolutely. And, it is infuriating. And I don't think even Santos' story has gotten the coverage that it should get. Again, I feel like the Trump, verdict, if this were Joe Biden, if this were Barack Obama, it would, break into every TV show that you're watching, and they'd be talking about it,
Yeah.
Still, this is, today we're not even talking about either of them. I'm not seeing this on the news.
Well, that's because there's so much, right? It's like this is the part of the problem for him is he's buried us in all of these problems, right? All of these potential indictments. It's like,
right.
Which one you pick?
We should default on our debt, which is the opposite of what
insane.
Insane. And this debt, like the president said, that we've accrued over 200 years. I mean, this isn't Joe
37% of it is his.
Right. Not Joe Biden's debt. Joe Biden has reduced the debt. But the problem is nobody wants to tell that story. It's much easier to, again, I don't want to hear that he called Caitlin Collins nasty.
Yeah.
To me, that's not news.
Who cares?
Who cares?
Right.
She doesn't care because she got up there and put herself in that position.
Right. And they had to know that was going to happen.
I mean, he's done it to every single woman he's ever been on a stage with. I mean, this is his, didn't we make T-shirts that said nasty woman?
Yeah.
I mean, wasn't that how long ago was that? I think we did that already.
Yeah.
This is the same.
I still have mine.
That's fabulous.
I mean, I wear it to bed sometimes. I don't wear it out anymore, but I still have it.
It's such an old story, and I just feel like our attention span, people still want. My neighbor has a flag that says, "Let's go, Brandon."
Yeah, at least he took down the F Joe Biden flag.
It's the same difference. Right?
I know, but at least it doesn't say it.
It's so gross. It's so gross. And this is, I don't know what's going to happen in next year. I don't know what the election is going to hold, but we haven't progressed from where we were. These
Neanderthals are still roaming the earth, and it's really troubling. They haven't evolved.
And I hope we don't, our economy, I just think Kevin McCarthy will intentionally tank our economy to hurt Joe Biden.
I know that there are people in his caucus that want to do that. So, Janet, you are a Floridian.
I guess I live here.
Yes, I mean you're a Connecticut Yankee,
Yeah,
and you're a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, or
exactly, yeah, or actually Red Sox, but yeah.
right. So tell me, like what, like Ron DeSanctimonious. Now I don't know. Do we want to call him Meatball Ron? Ron DeSanctimonious. I like Meatball Ron better than DeSanctimonious.
Is that the Trump nickname, DeSanctimonious?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so is Meatball Ron, by the way.
I don't like to promote Trump's nicknames.
Well,
we just call him Satan here. So,
well, I will say I think he's on Ozempic or something. He's lost a lot of weight.
oh, he absolutely is. There's no doubt he is. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I knew him, and I knew people who worked with him. He worked at the U.S. Attorney's Office. He wasn't actually a U.S. attorney. He got the job by being a JAG lawyer. So the people I knew who were U.S. attorneys were very clear that he would not have gotten hired, through the regular course of,
Right.
their hiring process. But, he went to Yale and Harvard. So, I mean, he's an educated guy. But one of my friends at the U.S. Attorney's Office said, I don't want to say he's an idiot, but, he was not liked. He was not considered intelligent, which, I guess he must have been a good baseball player to get to Yale. Again, that's hard to believe. Just, he doesn't look athletic.
No. He looks kind of like a meatball. I mean, that's probably why Trump gave him the nickname. I don't like promoting the nicknames either.
It's the punchability of his face that I hate. I mean, I don't care what his body looks like, but his smug little smirking face is, very hard to look at. And this is, we had to look at Rick Scott for years and years. I mean, it's bad enough when you're having a hurricane and then to have that face on TV all the time. But this, I mean, he is ruining Florida, which was already in pretty bad shape.
Yeah.
And, the Disney fight, I mean, it's not even smart politics what he's doing. I mean, not only are these things, mostly illegal, he just signed a law that just came into effect saying doctors can, discriminate, essentially, not treat people based on their religious beliefs, the just constant, trying to limit the press. And now this Disney fight, which, people love Disney here.
Yeah, they love Disney.
Love Disney.
People love Disney all over the world.
Right.
And this guy wants to be president of the United States. I don't know how attacking something people loves every day for a pretty benign statement about supporting the LGBTQ community.
Which, I mean, they have always had pride events. They're very, LGBTQ friendly. And, they also donate to Republicans. I mean, this is not like, we're not talking about the DNC. I mean, it's an organization that is, donated to both Democrats and Republicans. And, the amount of money that Florida and the amount of jobs that Floridians will lose if he goes forward, trying to change the way that part of Florida is governed. I mean, they gave Disney a lot of power over Central Florida because Disney brought a lot to Central Florida, and to just suddenly say, well, we're undoing all of that. I mean, he's going to probably have to change the tax structure. I mean, it will tank the Central Florida economy, and I-4 is where the elections are won and lost.
Right.
That it is more Democratic leaning than a lot of the state, but it is the swing part of the state that he's had to win to become governor, and presumably, I mean, he's going to win Florida, I guess, if he was the nominee. But I mean, he's not going to be president.
He's not going to be. I mean, look, he peaked before he entered the race, and now he's dropped off.
Right.
I mean,
people were desperate. I don't know if these are never Trumpers, because if the people who, some of the never Trumpers just, I think, don't like the uncouthness of Donald Trump.
Right.
They don't actually really mind what he stands for. They're not really pro, LGBTQ rights. They're not, even anti-abortion. I mean, they really don't mind what Trump did. They just don't like the way he did it. DeSantis, to them, was a more palatable, version of that. But once you see him in action, he's really not. I mean, he's just as, boorish. It's just, he's a kind of flatter version. I mean, he's a little more of a depressive than the manic Trump version of it.
And Trump's been running ads pummeling him all over the country.
Yeah, I mean, I don't watch a lot of local TV here, but I haven't seen anything in Florida. Quite frankly, we're in the middle where I live. My friend is running for mayor, Donna Deegan, and Jacksonville hasn't had a Democratic mayor I don't know, when I first moved here, I guess 25 years ago,
Right.
did. And I think she's going to win. I mean, she's great. She was a former TV anchor. She's a 3-time cancer survivor. It started out as breast cancer. She started a race. She's a marathoner. She started a marathon here that's, really just, charity. I mean, nothing kind of negative or controversial. So that's been kind of, she's running against a, rich white guy, which is generally what we elect for mayor, apparently, in Jacksonville, at least, for the last 4 mayors. So that's kind of, what we're caught up in here. And I think, if hopefully this ends up happening, we end up with a Democratic mayor. But the whole DeSantis, Trump thing, I haven't really seen that. I still see Trump bumper stickers. I mean, I don't know what it's like in the rest of the country.
Right.
Trump is still kind of king in Florida. I mean, they are not, as much as people, I think, supported DeSantis, those.
I think they supported him because Trump was supporting him.
Yeah. And, of course, anyone who doesn't understand that when you lay down with dogs, you get Donald Trump. I mean, this is, he's not loyal to anybody.
Right.
I mean, that it's not shocking that he would turn on DeSantis. And DeSantis is not appealing, but he's not attacking him directly. I mean, again, if your opponent was found liable for sexually assaulting a woman, wouldn't you be giving a press conference?
I would be giving a press, look, when the Manhattan DA indicted Trump, I would say, I don't know what the deal is with the Manhattan DA, but the guy did pay hush money to a porn star to cover up his affair.
There's no doubt.
How is that not an issue even by itself?
Right.
Right? Like, forget about the indictment. Everybody's like, oh, the indictment's political, but we probably think he did it.
Yeah, no, I think the facts of the, and I don't think it's at all like the John Edwards case. I think John Edwards' defense in his case, because the money that he paid her was to hide it from his wife, not to hide it from, the election, it was a slam dunk defense, I think.
Right.
In this case, he didn't even want to make the payments once he got elected.
Right.
He wanted to structure it. So
his own words are going to be what kills him, because he's going to say, wait till after the election, maybe then we don't have to pay it.
Exactly. And he never said, I don't want my wife to find out. Right?
He doesn't care. His wife knows.
Of course.
She knows she was one of them at one point.
Of course, right. Of course she knows. Yeah, I mean, again, it's a party of deplorable people, and yet, it's not fashioned that way. Nobody wants to sort of acknowledge what's happening. I mean, Mitt Romney, can come out and say, nice things about how terrible Trump is, and obviously Mitt Romney, whatever you think of him, he's a good husband. I'm sure he's a good man.
Right.
But those, values, Joe Biden being a good guy, Donald Trump being a bad guy, DeSantis, I guess, compared to Trump is even a good guy. It doesn't register with the press and doesn't register with the public.
What gets me is all these freaking family values people.
Yeah, it's gone.
Who during the 90s and early 2000s, we heard nothing but whining and gnashing of teeth over Bill Clinton and, JFK.
Yeah.
And like all this stuff from them. Where are they? They were just, they just were BS.
Yeah. And they're now admitting that, they don't care. They know he's like that. And the people who, talk about those values are the people who inevitably are getting caught, sexting young girls.
Or young men.
Yeah,
I remember the chair of one of the state Republican parties was like falling for some thirst trap on Instagram.
Yep.
And tweeting from his official account.
That was a very odd story, which also did not last long. I think that guy still has his job.
I'm sure he does.
Yeah. And here there was a local fundraiser, for Republicans.
By the way, I don't care if that guy wants to tweet about how somebody's in shape. I don't care. But he cares.
Well, exactly. And they're, allied with people, the same people who said Barack Obama, needs to denounce his pastor because he gave a speech that was, I don't even remember what it was that he said.
In the speech, he says, people say God bless America. I say God D America.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that, remember when it was...
And by the way, that's not an attempt of an impression. That is how my voice actually sounds right now.
Right. But remember, that was, when is he going to denounce him? When's he going to come out and denounce him?
Right.
Meanwhile, every day there is a Republican fundraiser or a Republican ally. DeSantis's ally here, actually finally he committed suicide because he was being investigated for sexting underage girls and asking them for pictures, and in exchange he was going to give them Taylor Swift tickets.
Wow.
Right up. Right?
The guy had Taylor Swift tickets. Can I sext them?
Bombshell, right?
Make my daughters very happy. I'll send them whatever he wants of me, but it's just like
exactly.
Taylor Swift. Well, you didn't say that.
Are you kidding me? He got Taylor Swift tickets?
Yeah.
And that is, not even going to register as a scandal.
No. No. We don't care about it when we do it. We only care about it when you do it.
And you're not even, this idea that these Nancy Mace, right, who's supposed to be normal, right? That's the ones that are like...
She's not normal.
She's not normal, but, at least whatever her name is, the ones that pretend that we're normal people. And Nancy Mace is going on TV sort of making up stories.
It's sick.
Using the word,
all right,
style and grooming.
We are out of time, as always.
Oh.
You kill me. I love you. Janet Johnson, at J Johnson Law on Twitter. All right, that's Janet Johnson. Hope you enjoyed that interview. Sorry, I was struggling through a bad voice. I'm almost positive it was allergies. It's almost 100% back now. I've been taking an over-the-counter allergy medication, which has helped. So I probably should have done that 3 weeks ago. I'm an idiot. I don't like to take anything. I don't like to take aspirin. I'm not a drug taker. It's not my thing. It's just not my thing. I just don't like having things that I have to do every single day and drugs. I do take Citracel for fiber, but that's because I was diagnosed with diverticulitis a couple years ago, and my doctor told me that he also had it, and that you got to keep a lot of fiber in your system to keep things moving, and then you won't have problems. And I haven't had a problem since, so it's worked. So I've done it. So I don't know what else to say today, right? There's a lot going on. I'm anxious to see what happens with this debt ceiling. I talked about that a little bit with Janet. I don't think it's gotten any better since I recorded that interview with her late last week. In fact, it's probably gotten worse. Sometimes these things come down to the wire. I think that Joe Biden needs to calm the markets right now and say he will not allow the United States of America to default. Now, again, for those of you on the right who say, well, why don't you just negotiate? That's what the budget's for. You negotiate spending during a budget. You don't negotiate spending at the point of a gun when we're about to pay for the spending that we already negotiated during the budget. And I find it rich, and I said this during the interview, Donald Trump is responsible for about 30% of our national debt. And he's the guy out there calling for default. I guess he would know. He went bankrupt 7 times, and he doesn't pay his bills. And that's the kind of guy he is. But if America doesn't pay their bills, the world economy goes bye-bye. You think things are bad? They'll really be bad, because things aren't bad right now. But they will be bad if we allow this to happen. So get on the phone to your congressman, tell them to pass a clean debt ceiling, and tell them to do it now. All right. I think you've had enough of me for one day, so I'm going to remind you now, as I always do, to seek the truth. Question everyone and everything, even me. Seek the truth. I know it's out there. I know you'll find it if you look for it. And I'll be back here again next week to tell you the truth as I see it. I'm Chris Hahn. Thanks for listening to the Aggressive Progressive Podcast.